Welcome to Dream, Declare, Deliver with your host, Chris Gorell. Join us each week as we explore how to live a life by design by applying the tools and techniques of emotional intelligence and personal transformation. Here's Chris.
Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Dream, Declare, Deliver. I'm Chris Gorell, author of Typhoon Honey, The Only Way Out Is Through, and recently a book called Learning to Feel. And in that, it's a book about emotional intelligence, and I explore how we have learned how to suppress our emotions and what do we need to do to get it back. And today I am delighted to welcome my friend and longtime colleague, Yuka Nakasone, from Barcelona, all the way. She traveled all the way here via Zoom so that we could talk together. And our topic today is emotions across the cultures. And both of us have done, Yuka far more than I, but both of us have done a lot of work internationally, and have observed people in different cultures. And what we notice is there are distinct differences about how people relate to their emotions, how they express their emotions or don't express them. And some cultures are very reserved about their emotional expressions, and some cultures are much more out there. I'll cite American culture as, like really out there. You know what we feel, we're very expressive. Our hands are all over the place and things like that. And so it's something that we're pretty aware of, and we want to just discuss a little bit today about how emotions vary. And what started our conversation, Yuka, was, the other day we were talking about somebody we totally love and admire, Erin Meyer, who wrote the book called The Culture Map. And she works a lot with business people on cross-cultural business dealings and how that works. But what we both noticed is she, even though she lives in Paris and has been there for, 15, 18, 20 years, a long time, she's very American in her presentation in that she has this big, shiny grin while she's talking. And my reaction is, wow, that's very American. And I wonder how that plays in other countries. And, Yuka, when you see Erin present, on her YouTube videos, on her TED Talks and things like that, what's your reaction, to, just to her smile and her energy level?
Yeah. And thank you very much for inviting. It's very nice to be here with you and all of the audience. Well, around Erin Meyer, I didn't think about how she's American when she presents until you said it. But it's very true. And after that, I tried to get her presentation in French because she lives in Paris and she says she teaches in French as well. So I tried to get her French recording. Unfortunately, I couldn't see anything on internet. So I can't compare. But one of my colleagues from London, she is a cross-cultural expert, and she posted some very similar content the other day. So I took a look and I observed her, how she expressed. And actually, you're right. She doesn't smile too much. She's more expressive maybe than Japanese people presenting, but not at that energy level. Very clearly expressed and articulated because it's for global audience. So maybe there are some people who are not English as the first language, so that's the reason why these cross-cultural experts speak clearly, maybe more clearly than other people consciously, but there's difference between this side of the pond and the other side of the pond, I would say,
Yeah, right.
So I guess your observation is really, let's say, kind of true. And I just don't know how much.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do remember when I was doing presentation, a couple presentations in London, the feedback I got was that I spoke too much with my hands. I was, bigger than life. And my energy level was way too high. That didn't work in the British culture, where they're a little bit more reserved about emotions and feelings. I learned somewhere, and I don't remember how or what, I remember reading that there is no psychotherapy in England. I know where I got it from. The brothers Andrew and Philip, when they were princes and stuff, they were sitting down with their wives, and it was just this casual conversation. And who's the one that's married to Markle, Meghan Markle? I don't know the royals very well, but the redheaded one was saying that he was seeking therapy about the loss of their mother, Princess Diane. And they were talking about how that's so not the British culture. Grin and bear it, carry on, is sort of the British culture. So I picked it up from those kinds of cues that I notice, how some presenters like Erin, who's just so enthusiastic, and she leans into the audience. She leans into her words. She's very physically demonstrative, not just with her smile and her energy, but with her whole body language. And then we go to a country like the Netherlands or Germany, where there's a sense of stoicism there, despite the fact that they have very deep emotions. We were talking before we started the call. I remember reading The Sorrows of Young Werther when I was in college, and it's a story about this young Burgermeister who is there to, kind of manage the city and stuff. And so he sits on a hillside and he watches the town, and he sees this young, this young wife, this woman who's married and has children, and he just thinks she's so beautiful, and he falls in love with her without ever meeting her, without ever talking with her, and out of respect to her, never ever will approach her. But, his sorrow is that he is pining away for this love, this deep, deep love that's unexpressed. And held within. And so his letters to his friends his friend is always, how much it hurts, just to be in love and not be able to express it. And it sort of, kind of is the Germanic way. It's like there's all these feelings, but we don't express them.
So my question here is, if this were to be an American Hollywood movie, what would be the plot? I mean,
the plot would be, we'd put, a Japanese, a Chinese, a Korean, an American, an Australian, a German, a Hungarian, and a British, and a Dutch, men, all, or men or women, doesn't matter. We'd put all these different cultures in a room, and there's no exit, and they have to deal with each other. And the plot would be, how do they work it out, their frustrations and their communication?
Oh, yeah. I mean,
as someone who's native to Japan, tell me a little bit about how you were instructed on feelings and emotions. And, we've had many conversations about the Japanese culture, but, tell us about that, growing up and what you learned about feelings and emotions.
And definitely we suppress emotions. And especially I feel bad thinking about how Japanese boys are taught not to cry, not to, whine, not to, because you're a boy, you can't do that. That's something I think it's very unfortunate that mothers teach boys like that.
Is the instruction for girls different?
We can kind of cry, yes. And but Japanese boys are really instructed not to cry, not to whine, not to express. And society itself is, of course, directed by these people. I mean, the unfortunate fact is that my country, Japan, is one of the let's say most developed countries, and we're managing fortune, right? But if we talk about the equality in the society, talking about women and men, it's faster to count from behind, right? It's 100 something in 200. So it's really unfortunate the society itself is run in that way. But imagine all the men are kind of directed and taught from the beginning not to express.
Right.
So the society itself is, I guess, you teach leadership, right? So the crowd or the people really reflect who the leader is, I guess. So the Japanese culture not expressing too much is a part reflecting that.
Yeah.
And a part, it's really Oriental culture that is more oriented to the organizations, small or big, from family to your community to your society to company to school to everything else, that they are more important than you are as an individual.
Well,
so individual emotions is not important.
Right. And we talk a lot about high context cultures and low context cultures, and how America as a low context culture, we're very explicit and we're very direct in our communication. We'll explain, the rule of thumb in doing presentations in America is tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So you repeat the message 3 times so you're sure that it's sinking in. And that would never happen in a high context culture like Japan, where, it's expected that you understand and that you listen deeply, So there's that variable there where, countries different in terms of their contextualization of emotions and thoughts. But you're also pointing to something else that is really important in most Asian cultures, which is that the community and the family and the group are more important than the individual, So, you would never expect someone in the group to assert themselves over anybody else.
No.
Because that's just not done. The group comes first. So I'm a part of the group, and so my emotions or my feelings about things are less important than how the group performs and how it works together.
Exactly. And you learn this in a very hard way because, of course, from the kindergarten to school up until you graduate from the elementary school, secondary school, then you can choose to study more in the university. In all scenarios, you're taught to respect the harmony, respect the organization from the first moment. And of course, kids are kids. So maybe they express their opinions, emotions, or whatever it is. But usually, maybe there are exceptions, but usually they get hit if they assert. Even if they're right. Yeah. For example, wow. I was hated by the teacher. In the Oriental, in the Occidental world I'm living in, I am kind of not speaking up, silent, quiet, all that you want. But in Japan,
you are very outspoken.
I'm very outspoken.
Yeah.
So
right.
I started to tell teachers in the classroom, hey, I saw something else in the book, blah, blah, blah. Raising my hands.
Yeah.
Teachers hated me.
Oh my goodness.
It is not supposed to do. So
where in America we'd get points, we'd get stars and kudos for doing that. I also remember, some time ago, a long time ago, you were going through a particularly rough, patch and you were saying, we were on Zoom and you were saying, that you were very sad and your face looked as calm and normal as it does right now. And I said offhandedly to you, well, Yuka, tell your face. And you leaned into the camera and you said, Chris, look at me. I'm Japanese. We do not show emotion, and that's, that was a big awakening for me because I hadn't realized, as much as I know you and you have become, somewhat Americanized, somewhat Spanishized or, because of your places that you've lived and everything, you're much more expressive than most people from your culture.
Yeah.
And so I just never realized that about you until you told me, and I go, oh yeah, I need to remember that, so I listen more when I'm talking to you and stuff.
Thank you. And it's so true though. I mean, you never know what an Oriental person is thinking, looking at their face. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Really. So, or maybe it doesn't work to try to read somebody's emotion if you're coming from another culture. Just that, period. I mean, you can't
assume.
No.
So the best thing to do is always ask, but even, what's the thing that you were telling me about PK, you can't read the air, somebody who's illiterate, he can't read.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What is that?
It is called, in Japan, it is said KY.
KY. Sorry.
KY. Yeah. K is kuki, air. Y is yomenai. Yomenai. Yomu is read. Nai is not. So you can't
read the air.
The air.
Yeah.
And that's something that we are taught from the beginning of our life to really
how to read the air.
How to harmonize yourself with the group you're in, and how to read what we need to do with them. So when we miss the cue and we don't understand what the group dynamic is, you're taught you are KY. You're not reading the air. Right. It's insult. It's like you're stupid.
Yeah, right. You're illiterate, right?
Yeah.
Would I be considered illiterate or can't read the air if I ask, how are you feeling? Without, first trying to sense that. Is it not wrong, but is I
guess it's true. When I ask them, I more or less know what they're feeling. Because I'm an empath, it's my superpower, so I can read more than usual people. That's for sure. But I know what the expected answer is.
Yeah.
When I ask. So I ask, how are you feeling? Oh, how are you feeling? Can you tell me? My tone is going to change because I'm reading the maybe nonverbal cues and languages they're using. So that's the communication that many Oriental people use. The thing is, if a Chinese person can read Japanese person, maybe yes, maybe not, because they're from this side of the world, Occidental world, they're kind of the same, but APAC is
they're high context cultures. They're same in that way, but very different in terms of the culture itself. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. I mean, for example, the Chinese people, Korean people, Japanese people, we really respect the group, family, tradition, all that. But there are lots of details that are not the same. So maybe it's kind of Japanese arrogance to say this, but it's really hard to read a Japanese person without being Japanese.
Right.
Maybe.
Well, I think that's true, for just about every culture. I mean, what we can look at is what they're doing, because, in how this all works together, there's sort of a cycle that starts with, your inner beliefs, what you've learned about the world. So as a child growing up in Japan, you learned certain behaviors and certain beliefs about this is the way the world is. Those beliefs cause your thoughts. Your thoughts then cause your feelings, your emotions. And your emotions and feelings cause you to act in a certain way. And those produce results. The results feed back into your belief system. They either confirm or reject refute your belief system. So that cycle continues on through life. And what we see as the tip of the iceberg is what people do.
Yeah.
So in some ways we can watch what people do, and intuit a little bit about what might be the belief system going on inside that. Because you and I could be in the same situation and observe something happening and have completely different interpretations of what's going on there.
Yeah.
Because of our belief systems, because of how we grew up, and what's encoded in our brains as the way it should be. you know, so you may read it differently. And what you said about, you know, I don't think it's arrogance at all to say, you know, some of what goes on in Japanese culture can only be understood from a Japanese mind. Because you have that contextualization and the belief structure that would explain why in this situation that person did that.
And, what's really interesting right now is there's some English speaking but bilingual Japanese people with totally Occidental aspects are there in Japan. And I really love to know what's going on in their mind.
Right.
Because they're born in Japan. They're raised in both languages. And they went to the Japanese school system. And they, you know.
And yet they're working in a company where English is the language that they use. What's the name of that I can't remember. There's one company that the owner and CEO does not allow anyone in the company to speak anything other than English because he believes that that's the international business language.
I think there are two. I don't know if it's true right now or not, but there are two. One is Uniqlo. The other is Rakuten. These are really global companies.
Rakuten, that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. And even if it's two Japanese people speaking with each other, he wants them to be speaking in English. And so it's really, it would be interesting, you know, for you to watch that and see how the Japanese subculture that's inside of them is affecting their language and the way they talk, you know.
You know, it's really interesting that you said this example, because I have a perfect example to talk about as my experience. Changing the language doesn't change the culture.
Right.
Even in the situation is in different culture, meaning I lived in the United States.
Yeah.
I worked in a company which was in Massachusetts. That's the reason why I know you.
Yeah, right.
And I was speaking, of course, English in the business setting. Once I realized that, yes, I was speaking English, but in the Japanese way. I confused everybody, especially my boss, who was French, but we are in the States, you know? And I went into the meeting and he explained something. And I said, for me, it was kind of, no, we can't do that. I mean, my thought was to tell him that I don't agree, right? But Japanese people say, no, don't say no, as you know. So I said, okay, yes, boss name. And then I went on and on why this wouldn't work. So he was completely confused.
Right.
You said yes. Your answer is yes or no. You know, then I realized what I was doing. I was speaking in English, but in the very Japanese way.
Yeah. That's amazing.
I could have said it. Yeah, I could have said, no, my boss, I don't believe this would work because blah, blah, blah. This is the English way of expressing, right? I said, yes, I hear yes. And without saying yes means I see you, I hear you, but I don't say that. Then I go, I believe this wouldn't work because blah, blah. That's very Japanese way. It's going to be difficult. When a Japanese person say, this is going to be difficult, you can be 99% sure that she or he is saying no.
No. right.
Difficult means no.
Yeah, right. What are some of the other differences that you notice about how different cultures, I mean, you and I have presented together in Germany and Munich, in Warsaw, we've in Barcelona. What are some of the differences that you notice about how people express feelings, just in terms of agreement, disagreement, and things like that in different cultures?
It's right at this moment I'm discussing this with one of my clients who is a CTO of a startup. Mm-hmm. So he's very scientific mind. He's very straightforward, let's say. But he is Spanish, right? Mm-hmm. And I told him, when he expressed something in social media, I gave him feedback. What do you want to say this in English? Right? Mm-hmm. And he explained what he wanted to say, but he didn't say, I mean, imagine Twitter's small space to express, and it has to be very clear. And if you write in English, you have to go to the point, like, I question this. Yeah. I doubt this. I don't think this is good. That's a way to express, right? Mm-hmm. But in Spain, for example, it perceived as kind of simple, stupid, to say something so simple, simply. So we have to find a way to make people think that what we are thinking. Mm-hmm. That's the sophisticated way of communicating, and that is the superb way of communication. But this doesn't work in English.
No. And so, so what might be confusing to an English-speaking person in Spain is all of the flowery, extra details around things that are provided as part of the expression.
And never to the point.
And it just seems like it's never to the point, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And both parties are going to be very frustrated.
Yeah.
Because Spanish person is going to think, is he stupid? Is she stupid? Yeah. She doesn't get it. He doesn't get it. And the other party is, why he's elaborating so much? Say it simply.
Yeah, right.
So both parties get so frustrated. Mm-hmm. But somehow we need to make these people understand that it's not about our way of saying or expressing, but our objective is to communicate. Mm-hmm. So how we are perceived correctly is the thing that we care about.
Right.
So I need to drive people in that way, not telling them to do this, do that, but try them to see how they're perceived, so that maybe they need to think, right?
I remember, a couple of years ago, you and I had lunch with our friend Connor Neal, who's a professor at IESE in Barcelona. And Connor was telling us about how he loved the Spanish culture. And what he loved most about the Spanish culture was that their relationship with time and with the person that they're with. And it's far more important to be with somebody, to complete the whole conversation, to do a full, experience of it, than to be on time to the next meeting.
Yes.
So they're very forgiving of people who are late to another meeting because they were in a previous meeting and working with somebody. And it's understood that you gave your all to that other person. and he, he was contrasting that with, the British culture. He's Irish, it's like, and how punctual they are, and how curt they are about hi, shake your hand, bye, and that's it. But we packed so much in that conversation. It was such a full conversation that I really got the experience from Connor that he gave us his full attention for the full amount of time, even though he had another appointment afterwards, and eventually had to excuse himself from the meeting. We both really felt full, at the end of the conversation.
And it's really interesting because in the Japanese culture, it's kind of reverse. You have to arrive early. So if you don't clear the meeting room 10 minutes before the next meeting is coming, and you're there and delivering all the conversation and go overtime, you're perceived to be very
rude. Yeah.
So
right.
It's completely reverse.
Yeah.
It's very interesting how cultures work.
So we're coming up to the end of our time here, and it goes so fast when I'm talking with you. But there are a couple of resources that we can point to. We've already talked about Erin Meyer's culture map. The other thing that we referred to is Richard Lewis's view of when cultures collide, and he has this triangle of placement of high context, low context, and both culture, and where different countries and cultures fall on his map. Are there other resources that you would point to that would help people understand how culture and emotions affect people's behaviors on an international level? And I might say, for those of you who are listening, that Yuka's job is globalization. So she works with, on a very strategic level, she works with companies on taking their product into different cultures, and how you just can't translate the message from one culture to another. You have to really understand how it's going to be received, and the nuances of language and emotion and things like that in each of the cultures, so that the product and the messaging around the product can be properly received or understood in the other culture. So are there other resources that you could point to that would help people who are listening to this?
Yeah, their podcast from London. And I think it is called Culture Cooper or something like that. And it is run by one of my friends. And she is a cross-cultural expert as well. And it's a very interesting contrast to these two studies you pointed out. Because she's British.
Her name is? Put you on the spot, or say the name of the podcast again.
Yeah, I think her name is. Sorry, I have her.
Yeah, your face right
in front of me.
Yeah,
but I can certainly deliver the name later.
Yeah,
I think it is Culture Cooper.
Culture Cooper.
Cooper is a cup of tea, like it's a really British expression. And and she's talking about cultural differences, how to communicate in this global organizations. And she's really up to scratch. And this week, I think she is delivering a podcast about future of work. And how we need to think about this global phenomenon of, global teams and all of that stuff. So
That'd be interesting. I'll have to look it up. Yeah. You can tell that we don't rehearse these things because I spring things on my guests, and sometimes we don't have the rehearsed answer in our heads. So thank you so much, Yuka, for joining me today. I always love talking with you and your insights, what you have to offer. So thank you. Many blessings.
Thank you.
Obrigado. And thank you. And we'll see you all in the next time. And that's it for today.